In this tutorial, I'll give you the understanding of the advanced tuning options. Brake bias defines which axle braking strength is applied to the most. Front bias brakes can reduce oversteer but can cause understeer. Rear bias brakes can reduce understeer but cause oversteer. Too much bias either axle can cause your wheels to lock. Brake strength changes the braking force applied to your wheels. Keep in mind that your car can only brake as hard as you have traction on all your wheels. If your braking force exceeds available traction, your wheels lock. Final drive ratio changes how quickly you can run through all your gears under full acceleration. Keep in mind, the longer the gear ratio, the more top speed you have. The shorter the gear ratio, the more acceleration you have. As well as final drive ratio, you can also change the individual gear ratios of first, second, third, all the way up to 7th gear, depending on your car. I'll show you an example of my car's setup. Having a lower first and second gear will give you more acceleration, and the mid-range third and fourth gear will give you medium acceleration and top speed through corners. Having longer 5th and 6th gear will give you more top speed once you get to the higher end gears. Now we're going to have a look at the front and rear differential on the car setup menu. A strong front differential will improve traction. However, it may induce understeer, particularly in low grip conditions. A loose front differential will improve cornering at a cost of straight line stability. A strong rear differential will improve traction. However, it may induce oversteer, particularly in low grip conditions. A loose rear differential will improve cornering at a cost of straight line stability. Now moving on to the advanced part of the differentials. A limited slip differential allows two wheels on the same axis to spin at different speeds. Lowering the driving lock percentage gives you more grip under acceleration, and if you notice the car understeering out of corners, lower the front driving lock percentage and raise the rear driving lock. LSD braking lock is like driving lock. It works during deceleration instead of acceleration. If you've noticed an abundance of braking understeer, raise the front LSD braking lock percentage or lower the rear braking lock percentage, and vice versa. Applying LSD preload will partially lock the differential when little or no torque is applied to the drivetrain, ensuring it is never full open. This can improve mid-corner traction, but raising it too high may cause understeer. Strengthening the Viscous Differential will restrict wheel speed difference between the front and rear axles. This in turn will slow down the rear wheels and speed up the front wheels in driving oversteer situations. When the rear wheels have broken free, your front wheels are still gripping and the throttle is applied. When your rear driving diff is stronger than your front driving diff, this reduces oversteer and increases understeer when sliding. Torque bias determines how torque is split between the rear axles. Usually more torque is put to the rear because during acceleration, weight is shifted to the back of the car. Conservative setups shift 60% of the torque to the rear. Personally, I put 50 to 70% in the setup of the Subaru, but this is car dependent. And by doing this will allow my front wheels to maintain grip in difficult situations under acceleration, and it will decrease understeer. Ride height determines ground clearance, which also determines how much spring travel is allowed before the spring compresses to the point that the top of the wheel hits the wheel well. When your car rides high, that raises the center of gravity of your car, which is not a good thing to have. So what I like to do for gravel stages is raise your ride height above the default, and for tarmac stages I lower it below the default. But in most cases, the ride height of the front and the rear should be exactly the same. Spring rate is how stiff your suspension is. Balancing the front and rear spring rate is one of the easiest ways to balance understeer and oversteer. But be careful, soft front springs and stiff rear springs will mean your car absorbs bumps in the front, but bounces hard off them in the rear, which will lead to your car jumping nose up. The anti-roll bar is a link between your left and right suspension, which helps improve body roll. By making the front ARB soft and the rear stiff, this will cause oversteer. If you want more understeer, strengthen your front ARB and weaken the rear. Negative camber will help with corner grip. I wouldn't extend beyond -1 degree of camber, but having a higher negative camber on the front, especially on tarmac, will help with front grip during cornering, similarly to what softening the ARB does. If your negative camber is too high, braking and acceleration traction suffer. For the rear tires, I don't like to go beyond 0.50 degrees because the further increasing the camber on the rear tires will hurt straight line acceleration. Toe-in will point the tires away from the center line, and this increases turn-in. Don't exceed -0.3 degrees front toe angle. Rear toe angle is different. Typically you want negative toe angle on the rear tires, and on the rear tires this will allow for extra oversteer during turning and acceleration, which is a good thing. But remember, different car layouts, this may change a lot from rear wheel drive, four wheel drive to front wheel drive. As you see here, my Subaru uses +50 toe in on the rear, but this is just to my liking, so I can get the car to turn the way I like to. Bump stiffness is how easy your springs are to compress. Softer bump will let you glide over rough surfaces, and so on a bumpy track you need a slightly softer bump so your car won't get airborne over small bumps and maintain good traction. If you set the bump value too soft, the car will have a tendency to bounce off the road. Set it too stiff and it will not do its job in absorbing the bump's energy. Having a stiffer rear bump and a softer front bump will aid in turn-in. I usually like 4 to 5 out of 10 soft in the front and 5 to 6 out of 10 in the rear, but that should change based on the car layout. At a certain point when you land from a jump, your spring will compress really fast. If it goes past a certain threshold, the spring rate for the fast bump activates. Having a softer fast bump will allow you to travel much more smoothly through jumps or even on uneven surfaces. But make sure you have enough spring travel to have a softer fast bump and not let the top of the wheel touch the wheel well, and this may require you to raise the car's ride height in the suspension settings. Fast bump threshold is the compression rate which bump stiffness is switched to fast bump stiffness. Rebound, like bump, but instead of compression, rebound determines how fast the springs decompress. I usually leave this at default. Fast rebound is like fast bump, but mostly applies when getting airborne, when tires rapidly go from loaded to unloaded. Fast bump threshold sets the transition point between rebound and fast rebound. I usually also leave this one at default. Now that your vehicle setup's done, you can enter the shakedown and test your vehicle out on the track. After adjusting your setup, you should probably then enter the stage and then go from there. This concludes the tutorial for the vehicle advanced setup. If your car is slow in hairpins, lower the first gear ratio, strengthen the rear driving lock, put the rear torque up to 60 to 70%, strengthen the center viscous differential, and slightly increase the rear toe angle. If your car slides excessively on corner exit, soften the rear anti-roll bar and strengthen the front anti-roll bar. Lower the rear differential braking lock. If you have too much oversteer, lower the rear differential driving lock percentage, weaken the rear anti-roll bar and strengthen the front anti-roll bar, increase negative rear camber angle, try stiffening front bump, rebound, and softening the rear bump and rebound. With low acceleration on cornering, shorten the final gear ratio, shorten third and fourth gear, lower front LSD driving lock value, raise the rear LSD driving lock value. With unresponsive front wheels, add more negative front camber, less positive or even negative front toe angle, soften front dampening or stiffen rear dampening. If your car is unstable on bumpy terrain, raise your ride height in the front and back, soften your spring rate in the front and back, soften your fast bump and rebound dampening rates, lower your fast bump thresholds. With unstable braking at speed, shift the brake bias to the front around 70 to 75% and lower the brake pressure. If your car is unresponsive on tarmac, lower your ride height, stiffen your spring rate, stiffen your bump and rebound rates, increase negative front camber, increase positive front toe angle. This concludes car setup for Dirt Rally. I'm going to end the video with a stage that I did in the Subaru Impreza 1995 with a setup I made for the video.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Right 4 half long into left 5 for 60 crest. Into right 3 long. And left 2 half long, don't cut. Right 6 long, 80. Left 6, 80 over crest jump maybe. Left 6, 60. Right 2 continues 100. 4 long, 100 over crest jump maybe. Caution right 3 half long narrows. Into left 6 half long, no cut, 80 crest. Into keep left over jump. Into caution right 5 over 80 tight, 2 narrows and slippy. Into left 6 half long, no cut, right 6. Left 6, 80. Right 6 continues 80 and times 5. Left 5 bad camber, 80 crest jump maybe, left 3 half long, don't cut, bad camber. Into right 4 half long, don't cut, 60, left 6 over crest, into caution narrows, left 5 half long, into right 4 long, 80 crest jump maybe, and right 6 continues 100, 60 crest, and left 2 long. Right 5 long, times 3, 80. Left 2, don't cut, open long. Into small crest jump maybe, and right 5, and left 4 half long, don't cut. Into crest jump maybe, and caution left 6, turn right 1 half long, don't cut. And left 4 long, 80 through dip. Bump left 6, and right 5 half long. Into left 6, 100, keep right through dip. Left 6, don't cut, right 5. Into left 6, 80, right 4 tight. Into left 3, don't cut. Into right 4, continues to 80. Into left 5, half long, right 6, caution, keep right over crest. Turn left 4 long, don't cut, 100. Keep right over crest. Into left 5, continues to 100. And crest, 100, crest and narrows, right 5 times 4, into turn right 4, don't cut, left 6, 60, crest, left 4 long, don't cut, times 3, right 1 half long, don't cut, into left 4 half long, and right 1 half long, 80 mid over crest, 100. Narrows, left 6 over crest, right 5 don't cut, 100, caution narrows, right 6 long, over crest, into keep minnow, 2 crests, caution braking 60, right 3 half long, and left 4 half long, 100 through dip, crest jump maybe, to finish.